Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel. Peter likes books. Of course I do. I've liked them forever. I love them. But Peter Loves Books was taken. So anyway, let's get into this video today. Today is kind of a book review. I don't know. I'm going to talk about a book that I just read, and then I'm going to talk about some other things. So we'll see where this goes. It may be real short. It may be real long. You never know with my videos. So anyway, hi Tucker. You helping me out? He said, what are you drinking, Dad? Well, I'm drinking some coffee from Starbucks. Okay. By the way, if you didn't know, I have a review channel. It's called Peter Reviews Stuff, and over there today, I reviewed the Valentine's Day Conversation Hearts Frappuccino, so go check it out. All right, I finished an amazing book last night. But I don't really know how to say, like, oh, it was really good, or, oh, it was super interesting, it was very intriguing, or, oh my god, it was so fast-paced, you couldn't put it down, which all of those things are true. But the topic is very sensitive, and so, you know, it really got me thinking a lot about how to address some of these things with true crime. Like, how do you say, like, oh, I loved this true crime book, or one of the questions that people will ask you a lot is like, who is your favorite serial killer? Which translates into, who is your favorite serial killer that you're interested in, or that you love to read about, or that you're fascinated about, right? But if you think about it in the context of like a serial killer, it's really rather disgusting to think about it in that way, right? And so it's almost like you have to kind of like tune out, or, I don't know, become detached from any kind of emotion related to the story whatsoever. But something happened to me, a while back, and if you don't know, like, so I have a true crime book club. It's called Peter's Book Club, but it's changing. Actually, our live stream is this Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it is the Greg Olson book that we read for January. If you tell, no one tells. If you tell, do you remember? He said, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, so, well, I can tell you in here, because I just pulled up my need to finish reading. Hold on a second, I'll tell you what the book is called. If You Tell, A True Story of Murder, Family Secrets, and Something Else by Greg Olson. So, our review of that, our live stream discussion is this Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on my YouNow, which is linked below. If you'd like to guest, and you've read the book, you have to have read the book to guest in the live stream. But if you'd like to guest, just come in there, and we guest a lot of people so that they can join the conversation as well. If you don't want to guest, and you just want to stay, you know, in the conversation, you can do that as well. And the chat goes rather slow, so everybody kind of gets their opinions out there and gets to say what they want to say. So it's really fun. We have a great time over there. It'll be led by me and Mel and anybody else that wants to come in. Okay, so people know that I have this true crime book club. Well, about 2 years ago on my Peter Monn channel, I did a video, and it was about having possibly met a serial killer. We had a serial killer in Indianapolis, and his name was Herb Baumeister, and he killed 29 gay men, possibly more, and he was also the I-70 killer. So I did this video about, speculatively, about, I'm going to try to just give the rundown on this very quickly. I did this video where I was just like, you know what, because he used to pick up these guys from this bar that I used to go to like all the time with my friends, right? That was called Greg's or OP's back in the day. So I did this video, I was like, oh, I might have met him, blah, 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 whatever. So then I was at a 12-step meeting with a friend of mine, my good Judy Tanya, and we were talking to this guy that I hadn't seen in forever, and we were standing out there talking, and she was like, oh my god, and we were talking about like the old times, right? And she was like, I'm so glad that you guys never met that serial killer. I like just made the video or something like a month before. And he was like, looked at me and he was like, do you not remember that we went to like an after hours party there? And he was like, it was you and me and one other. I was like, no, like I don't really remember this, right? It kind of like came to me, but I didn't really remember it. So then I had these people reach out to me, and they asked me if I wanted to come and do a paranormal experience, like adventure out there. Not adventure, but paranormal, what do you call it? Just like where you go out there to ghost hunt, basically, at the mansion that exists, because people have bought it and they still own it. It's this huge, huge house out in the middle of nowhere. So my friends Melissa and Aaron, who they go on a lot of these ghost hunting things, you know, they do like all the ghost adventure tours, and they've gone to every, you know, what are they called, the old school insane asylums, we don't call them that anymore, but you know, like back in the day, the prisons, they've done all of those things, right, that are shut down, the abandoned ones. So we go out there and we did it, and it was intriguing to say the least. I had a moment where I did remember being in the basement, I think, and I talked about that on the video that I did. So there's a whole vlog over on my vlog channel. I think it's actually, out of all of the vlogs I've done over 3 years, it's the most viewed vlog. It's called Fox Hollow Farms. So if you want to go check that out, you can. But anyway, at the end of the night, we were all sitting in the basement, and you could look in the basement, and there was like a part that was like by this bar, and then there was it looked in on the pool. Well, the pool was this inside pool, and it was where he actually killed these men. And he'd take them down there and he would, you know, drug them or get them drunk, and then he would strangle them with the pool hose, and it's horrific. But anyway, so as I was sitting there and they're like doing this pendulum stuff, I was just like, you know, this isn't just like this fun, like, I don't know, it's just not interesting true crime to me. Like, this is very, very sad to me. And so I started looking at the whole situation in a different way, and we actually talked about it on the way home on the vlog, I think. And so I started looking at it in a different way. But as I have watched or listened to true crime or read true crime over the last couple years, it's really changed the way I have looked at true crime. And that if in a book, when you read it, do they address the victims? Do they share about the victims? Do they talk about the history of the victims and things like that? And what's interesting to me is, I was thinking, you know, that maybe it's a historical thing, that, like, you know, true crimes books from 30 years ago, they don't really do that as much, because this is more of a thing that we're talking about more today, about, you know, paying homage to the victim and instead of the killer more. But, you know, Anne Rule in The Stranger Beside Me about Ted Bundy, she did pay homage to the victims and talk about the victims in there and the history of the victims and their families and things like that. So she was doing that back then. But I have to say that when I read I'll Be Gone in the Dark, One Woman's Obsessive Search for the Golden State Killer by Michelle McNamara, who has since passed, I was so impressed with how she paid homage to the victims in that book and really talked about the families of the victims and the history of the victims. To then follow up and read the Audible exclusive, this is my second favorite audio true crime book, Evil Has a Name by Paul Holes, who is the investigator for like over 25 years on the Golden State Killer case. That book was so profoundly is not even the word. That book was so well done in the treatment of the victims that at the end of the book, and you hear the story of the victims all the way through, you hear about their families and their friends and all this kind of stuff. It was very much like told like a documentary. But at the end, they even have like the victims that have survived come on and share their stories or talk about it. And you hear the stories of family members of the victims. It just was like there was so much attention given to the victims that I thought that it was just extremely well done, appropriate, and sensitive. And I thought, this is the best example of this I have ever seen. Which, of course, because it was done by Paul Holes, who I love, right? But what was interesting about this is that there's like this thread of investigators that all worked on the Golden State Killer case. There was, I can't remember what the woman's name was, but she kind of like changed police procedure when a woman is involved. She was like always the first woman responder on the case. And she's in Evil Has a Name. And it's just like, to hear her story is so powerful. But all of these investigators, like, that case, I don't know if it was that case, I don't know what it was, but like, something about them, like, I don't know, they're a different set of people. Because I just finished reading Call Me God by Jim Clemente. Jim Clemente and Tim Clemente, well, Jim Clemente, I believe was on the Golden State Killer case, because I used to talk about him. But his brother Tim Clemente is in this case too, and this is about the DC shooter, okay? Now, I have to tell you going into this, I didn't know anything about the DC shooter, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody, so I don't want to say on here who the DC shooter is, because that's a huge part. If you don't know, like, if you go into it like I didn't know, and you have no clue who the DC shooter is, I don't want to ruin that, because that's part of, as you're reading it, what unfolds, and how the profiling and the is done so well. Done so well. Okay, it's like 7 hours and 20 minutes long on Audible. It's an Audible original. You can only listen to it on Audible. It is fantastically done. It is told like a documentary. It has several people talking in it. But the most fantastic thing of all, is the treatment of the victims in this book. It is exactly how a true crime book should treat the victims. They talk about the victims throughout the entire book. When each killing happens, you hear a family member talking about what happened, or if they survived, you hear them sharing their own story of what happened. At the end of the book, when it goes in and it talks about what happened at the end to the shooter, you hear family members from each of the victims talking about it. You hear about the citizen's trial. You hear about all this stuff. It is so fantastically done that really, at the end of the book, the last, I would say, third of it is dedicated entirely to the victims. Jim Clemente even goes into the book and talks about the importance of focusing on the victims. I think it's an important way to look at true crime today. And I loved the book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was intriguing. It was interesting. It was fast-paced. It was really a great book. But how do you say something like that, you know, about such a sensitive topic? It's hard. I don't know. I think the takeaway from it is it's an important book. I think it's important that we understand how something like that happens so it doesn't repeat itself again. I think it's an important book because I think that we need to be sensitive to people out there who have gone through such tragedies like this and to hear their stories. I think their stories are important. I think in reading true crime, it further, you know, now when I read true crime, okay, like it further even to me makes the point that the victim's point of view is so important when you're reading true crime, right? That it at some point they became the forgotten character of the story that was true. That this was not just a character in a book. This was a person whose life was lost, whose family was forever affected, whose children were forever affected, who's never going to see their legacy that was left on this world possibly, you know? And I think it's so, so, so important. You know, when I watched The Confession Killer on Netflix about Henry Lee Lucas, they really talk a lot about the victims in that, you know, documentary, and I thought it was fantastic. And I think that as we go forward, when we're talking about true crime, I think that's one of the things, you know, there's a lot of discussion, like, should family members of the killers of any case be able to write books about their stories? You know, are they allowed to, like, make proceeds? Because, you know, I think there's some law that says, like, the person that is, like, the killer can't make proceeds off of that. But I don't know, it's interesting. I don't have much interest in reading, you know, about that. Now, I will tell you, in the DC Shooters case, there's a family member that was completely away and apart from that situation, who I am kind of interested in reading her autobiography, because it's a completely different point of view. You should definitely read Call Me God. It is one of the most fantastic true crime books that I've ever read. Not only in that it is an exciting read as a true crime if you like true crime, but the homage that it pays to the victims is absolutely fantastic. And I think for true crime going forth, I think it's a really important way that we need to look at these books. Do they pay homage to the victims? Are the victims mentioned? Are they important? Do we know their families? Do we know who they are? Or are they just an afterthought? Because if a writer just makes them an afterthought, then that's probably maybe a book that we shouldn't be reading. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.